I served in the United States military because I believed in loyalty, sacrifice, and protecting the people who mattered. I survived exhausting training, painful injuries, and missions that changed me forever. But nothing I experienced while wearing that uniform prepared me for the betrayal waiting for me at home. Hello everyone. My name is Vivienne. I'm 28 years old, and for most of my life, I believed one simple thing: no matter how difficult life became, family would always stand beside you. I was wrong. I served in the United States military because I believed in loyalty, sacrifice, and protecting the people who mattered. I survived exhausting training, painful injuries, and missions that changed me forever. But nothing I experienced while wearing that uniform prepared me for the betrayal waiting for me at home. This isn't just a story about money. It isn't even a story about winning the lottery. It's the story of how my own parents chose a luxury yacht over their daughter's future. How my little brother sacrificed everything he had to save me, and how one unexpected miracle gave me the chance to expose a family secret that had been buried for years. If you think the people closest to you could never betray you, believe me, I used to think the same thing. Everything changed on a Tuesday morning. I was sitting inside a military orthopedic clinic just outside San Diego. The room smelled like disinfectant, fresh bandages, and cold air conditioning. My combat uniform was still dusty from training, and my right knee rested inside a thick black brace that made every movement feel like someone was driving a knife through my leg. The orthopedic surgeon had just finished studying my MRI. He removed his glasses, folded his hands together, and looked directly into my eyes. "Sergeant Vivienne," he said quietly, "your ACL is completely torn. There's also significant cartilage damage. Physical therapy alone won't fix this." I swallowed hard. "What happens if I wait?" The doctor hesitated. "If you don't receive surgery within the next few days, the damage could become permanent." Permanent. That single word echoed through my mind over and over again. Permanent meant I might never run normally again. Permanent meant my military career could be over. The permanent meant everything I had worked for since I was 18 years old could disappear because of one injury. The surgery wasn't impossible. It simply wasn't covered quickly enough through the military system, and the private procedure would cost $5,000. $5,000. For many people, it was a lot of money. For my family, it was less than what they spent on one weekend of shopping. I stared at my phone for nearly 10 minutes. I hated asking anyone for help. The military teaches you to solve your own problems, to carry your own weight, and to never complain, but this wasn't about pride anymore. It was about my future. Finally, I called my father. The phone rang several times before he answered. "Dad." Before I could continue, loud music blasted through the speaker. People were laughing, someone cheered, glasses clinked together. It sounded more like a celebration than a home. "Oh, Vivienne," my father sighed. "Can this wait? We're kind of busy." My heart sank. "Dad, I just left the military clinic. The doctors said I need emergency surgery. If I don't have it before Thursday, I might lose the ability to fully recover." There was silence. Not the kind of silence filled with concern. The kind of silence that says someone is waiting for you to finish talking. "The surgery costs $5,000. I continued softly. "I wouldn't ask if I had any other choice." Another pause, then my father spoke. "Vivienne, this is really bad timing." "Bad timing?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" He sighed again, sounding almost annoyed. "We'd just finished closing on Chloe's yacht." For several seconds, I honestly thought I had heard him wrong. "A yacht! Less," he replied casually. "You know she's always dreamed of owning one. The paperwork took forever, and today is the celebration." I couldn't speak. My fingers tightened around the phone until they turned white. $5,000. The amount that could save my career. The amount that could save my knee. The amount that could protect everything I had worked for. Was apparently too expensive. But spending more than $100,000 on my sister's yacht, that wasn't a problem. Before I could answer, I heard my mother's voice somewhere behind him. "Who's on the phone?" "Vivienne?" Dad answered. My mother laughed. "Tell her to stop being so dramatic." Each word hit harder than the injury itself. Dramatic. I had spent years risking my health for my country. Now I was begging my own parents for help, and they thought I was being dramatic. A moment later, another familiar voice came through the phone. "My older sister, Chloe." "Oh my God," she said with an irritated laugh. "Vivienne, seriously. Can you stop ruining the mood?" "I'm not trying to ruin anything," I whispered. "You literally called during my yacht party," Chloe replied. "Can't this wait? Take some Advil or something." "Take some Advil." Just like that. As though a torn ligament and possible permanent disability were nothing more than a headache. I looked down at my swollen knee. The pain suddenly didn't matter anymore. Something hurt far worse. The realization that my own family had already decided what my future was worth. And according to them, it wasn't worth $5,000. I ended the call without saying another word. No goodbye, no argument, no tears. I simply pressed the red button and stared at the dark screen. For the first time in my life, I truly felt alone. That evening, I sat in my tiny apartment surrounded by unopened medical papers. Outside, the California sunset painted the sky orange and purple. Inside, everything felt cold. I replayed the conversation again and again. Maybe I had asked at the wrong time. Maybe they would call back. Maybe they would realize how serious this was. Hour after hour passed. No phone call. No text message. No apology. Nothing. Around midnight, my phone finally lit up. For one brief second, hope returned. Maybe Dad had changed his mind. Maybe Mom finally understood. Maybe Chloe wanted to apologize. I unlocked the screen. It wasn't an apology. It was a picture. My entire family stood together on the deck of a beautiful white yacht. Everyone was smiling. Champagne glasses raised high. Fireworks exploded behind them. The caption underneath read, "Def, the perfect family. Dreams really do come true." I stared at that photo until my vision blurred. Then I quietly placed my phone face down on the table. I finally understood the truth. Their dream had come true, while mine was quietly falling apart. I had no idea that less than 48 hours later, someone would knock on my apartment door carrying a worn envelope, a heartbreaking sacrifice, and a single lottery ticket that would change every one of our lives forever. The knock on my apartment door came just after sunrise. At first, I thought I was imagining it. I hadn't slept much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the picture my family had posted from the yacht party. Their smiles, their laughter, their celebration. Meanwhile, I was trying to figure out how to save my career, and maybe even my ability to walk without pain. The knock came again, slow, gentle, almost hesitant. I pulled myself up from the couch, grabbed my crutches, and carefully made my way to the front door. When I opened it, I froze. Standing in the hallway was my younger brother, Leo. His old pickup truck was still running outside. His jeans were stained with motor oil. There was grease under his fingernails and dark circles beneath his eyes like he hadn't slept in days. But what caught my attention most, was the look on his face. He looked heartbroken. "Hey, Viv," he said quietly. I forced a smile. "You didn't have to drive all the way here." He shrugged. "I wanted to see you." For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Leo had always been different from the rest of the family. While Chloe loved expensive parties, Leo loved fixing old engines. While my parents obsessed over appearances, Leo never cared what anyone thought. He was quiet, honest, and kind, the kind of person who would help a stranger change a flat tire without expecting anything in return. He stepped inside my apartment and looked around. The medical papers were scattered across the kitchen table. My knee brace sat beside a bottle of pain medication. Without asking, he already knew. They really said no, didn't they? I looked away. They were busy, laughed once, not because anything was funny, because sometimes the truth hurts too much to cry. "I went to the marina yesterday," he said. I looked back at him. "You did?" He nodded slowly. "I wanted to ask them myself. What happened?" He rubbed the back of his neck before answering. "Dad said helping you wasn't a smart financial decision." My chest tightened. Leo continued. "Mom said you'd recover eventually." His voice became quieter. "And Clue." He stopped. "I already knew." "What did she say?" Leo looked at the floor. "She asked why you couldn't just take painkillers." For several long seconds, neither of us said another word. Finally, Leo reached into the pocket of his work jacket. He pulled out a thick envelope. "I brought you something." He placed it on the table. I opened it carefully. Inside was a stack of cash, mostly 20s, some 50s, a few $100 bills. I counted it once, then again. $840. I looked up. "Leo, it's all I could get. Where did this come from?" He didn't answer. Leo, his eyes filled with tears. "I sold Grandpa's tools." Everything inside me stopped. "No," he nodded. "I sold every single one." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Our grandfather had been a mechanic for nearly 40 years. When he passed away, he left his prized snap-on tool collection to Leo. Those tools weren't just expensive, they were priceless. Every wrench, every socket, every screwdriver, every toolbox, each one carried memories. Leo had dreamed of opening his own restoration garage one day. He always said Grandpa's tools would be the first things hanging on the wall. Now, they were gone. Because of me. "You shouldn't have done that," I whispered. "I had to?" "No." "I did." "They were your future?" Leo smiled sadly. "So are you." I couldn't hold back anymore. For the first time since leaving the hospital, I cried. Not because of my knee, not because of my parents, but because my little brother had sacrificed the only inheritance he truly loved, just to give me a chance. After a while, Leo wiped his eyes and laughed quietly. I almost forgot. He reached into another pocket and pulled out a wrinkled lottery ticket. I bought this with the change. I raised an eyebrow. He shrugged. I know it sounds stupid. It doesn't. I just kept thinking. He smiled awkwardly. Maybe God owes our family one miracle. I laughed through my tears. You've always believed in miracles. Somebody has to. He placed the ticket on top of the envelope. If it wins, he joked, maybe you can buy Grandpa's tools back. I smiled. If it wins, I'll buy you the biggest garage in California. We both laughed. It felt good. For the first time in days, the apartment didn't feel so empty. Leo stayed that night. He slept on my old couch while I rested in my bedroom. Before falling asleep, I looked at the lottery ticket sitting on the kitchen counter. I almost threw it away. The odds were ridiculous. Millions of people bought tickets every week. People like us never won. Still, I couldn't bring myself to toss away the tiny piece of paper. Maybe because Leo believed in it. Or maybe because, deep down, I wanted to believe in something too. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. My knee still hurt. The apartment was silent except for the sound of Leo snoring softly from the living room. I made a cup of coffee and picked up my phone. Almost absent-mindedly, I searched for the winning lottery numbers. One by one, I compared them. The first number matched. I frowned. The second matched too. I checked again. The third, the fourth. My hands began to shake. By the fifth number, I could barely breathe. This can't be real, I whispered. Then I looked at the final number. It matched. Every single number. The coffee mug slipped from my hand and shattered across the kitchen floor. Leo woke instantly. Viv. I couldn't answer. He rushed into the kitchen. What happened? Are you okay? I slowly turned the phone toward him. Then I held up the lottery ticket with trembling fingers. My voice was barely louder than a whisper. Leo. I think. We just won $2.4 million. His face went completely white. Neither of us celebrated. Neither of us screamed. Because in that exact moment, I realized something far more important than becoming rich. For the first time in my life, I finally had the power to uncover why my own family had abandoned me. And before the sun set that evening, I would walk into one of the most powerful law firms in Los Angeles, and declare war against the people who shared my last name. Leo and I sat at the kitchen table for nearly an hour, staring at the lottery ticket as if it might suddenly disappear. Neither of us smiled. Neither of us celebrated. $2.4 million was enough to change our lives forever. But at that moment, money wasn't the first thing on my mind. I kept hearing my father's voice. We just closed on Chloe's yacht. I kept hearing my mother's laughter. Tell her to stop being dramatic. And worst of all, I kept hearing Chloe's careless words. Take some Advil or something. Those words echoed louder than the lottery jackpot ever could. Leo finally broke the silence. What are we going to do? I looked down at the ticket. First, I said calmly, I'm getting my surgery. He nodded, and after that? I folded the ticket carefully and slipped it into my wallet. After that, I'm going to find out why our family stopped being a family. That afternoon, we drove into downtown Los Angeles. Instead of walking into a luxury car dealership, instead of looking at expensive houses, instead of spending a single dollar celebrating, I walked into one of the most respected law firms in California. The receptionist glanced at my military uniform before politely asking, Do you have an appointment? No. But I need to speak with someone who specializes in corporate fraud. She looked surprised. A corporate fraud? I nodded. An inheritance law. A few minutes later, I was sitting inside a large office overlooking the city skyline. The attorney introduced himself. My name is Harrison Vance. He looked to be in his late 50s, gray hair, sharp blue eyes, the kind of man who noticed details before anyone else. What can I help you with, Sergeant? Without saying a word, I placed the lottery ticket on his desk. His eyebrows rose immediately. I assume you've already confirmed this is authentic. I have. And you haven't claimed it yet? No. He leaned back in his chair. Interesting. Then I slid another document toward him. A copy of my grandfather's will. This, I said quietly, is the real reason I'm here. He spent several minutes reading every page, occasionally adjusting his glasses, occasionally making small notes. Finally he looked up. Tell me everything. So I did. I told him about my military service, my injury, the surgery, the phone call, the yacht, the way my parents refused to help, Leo selling Grandpa's tools, every painful detail. When I finished, the office was completely silent. Harrison slowly folded his hands. Vivienne, I've represented wealthy families for over 30 years. I've seen greed. I've seen betrayal, but something about your story doesn't make sense. What do you mean? He tapped Grandpa's will. According to this document, Your grandfather divided Sterling Holdings equally between you, Chloe, and Leo, correct? So why would your parents suddenly claim they couldn't afford $5,000? I frowned. They said money was tight. He shook his head. No. He pointed toward a paragraph inside the will. This company owns commercial real estate worth tens of millions. He looked directly into my eyes. Families with assets like this don't suddenly become short on cash. Unless… He stopped speaking. I leaned forward. Unless what? His expression hardened. Unless someone has been stealing. The room suddenly felt colder. You think my parents… I don't know yet. He interrupted gently. But if they're using company money for personal luxury purchases, that would explain a great deal. He reached for his phone. Within seconds, another man entered the office carrying a laptop. This is Morrison said. Former FBI financial investigator. Marcus smiled politely. What exactly are we looking for? Harrison answered before I could. Everything. Over the next several hours, Marcus began pulling public financial records, corporate filings, property ownership, luxury purchases, bank registrations, everything connected to Sterling Holdings. Leo and I watched quietly as information filled the computer screen: addresses, companies, loan documents, investment reports. Then Marcus suddenly stopped typing. That's strange. What? Harrison asked. Marcus turned the monitor around. There was a large corporate loan taken out 3 months ago. For what? He clicked another file. His eyes widened. A yacht. I felt my stomach twist. Marcus continued reading. $150,000. Purchased through Sterling Holdings. Harrison slowly removed his glasses. So the yacht wasn't bought with personal money. Marcus shook his head. It was purchased using company credit. I looked at Leo. Neither of us said a word, because we were both thinking the same thing. Grandpa built that company, not our parents. Marcus kept digging. 10 minutes later, he found something even worse. Harrison, you need to see this. Another document appeared on the screen. It contained my name, my signature, and a legal statement giving away my voting rights inside Sterling Holdings. My heart nearly stopped. I never signed that. Marcus zoomed in. The signature looked almost perfect. Almost, but it wasn't mine. It's forged, I whispered. Harrison nodded slowly. I agree. Marcus opened another file, then another, then another. Each document painted the same picture. Money disappearing. Fake companies, offshore accounts, luxury purchases, hidden transfers, millions of dollars, quietly moving out of Sterling Holdings. No one had noticed. Because everyone trusted Arthur and Eleanor, my parents. Harrison stood and walked toward the window. For a long moment, he simply stared at the Los Angeles skyline. Finally, he turned around. I need your permission. For what? To launch a full forensic investigation. Once we begin, there will be no turning back. Your parents will know. Your sister will know. The company will know. And if criminal activity exists, it will become public. I looked toward Leo. He didn't hesitate. They made their choice, he said softly. Now it's our turn. I looked back at Harrison. For years, I had believed silence would protect my family. Now I understood something different. Sometimes silence protects the people doing wrong. I took a deep breath. Then I reached across the desk and signed the investigation agreement. My voice was calm, steady, certain. Find everything. Harrison nodded once. I promise you. If someone betrayed your grandfather's legacy at Tiddo, they won't hide for much longer. As Leo and I left the office that evening, neither of us noticed the black luxury SUV parked across the street. Inside, someone lifted a phone to their ear. They've hired Harrison Vance. A long pause followed. Then a woman's cold voice answered. I don't care what it costs. Stop them, before they find the truth. The next 3 weeks passed more quietly than I expected. On the surface, nothing seemed to change. My parents continued posting pictures from expensive restaurants. Chloe uploaded videos from the yacht almost every day, smiling into the camera as if her life were perfect. Friends commented about how successful our family looked. No one knew that behind those perfect photographs, everything was beginning to collapse. While they celebrated, Harrison's team worked around the clock. Every morning I attended physical therapy after my knee surgery. Every afternoon I met with investigators. Every evening I returned home with another folder filled with evidence. The deeper we looked, the uglier the truth became. Marcus spread dozens of documents across the conference table. This wasn't random, he explained. It was planned. He pointed toward a timeline covering nearly 8 years. Every year, money disappeared. Never enough to attract attention. Always just below the amount that required mandatory reporting. I stared at the numbers. Hundreds of thousands, then millions. Gone. Without anyone asking questions. They knew exactly what they were doing. Harrison said. They treated Sterling Holdings like their personal bank account. Leo quietly turned another page. His expression suddenly changed. You need to see this. I leaned closer. It was a payment record, one of many. But this one caught my attention immediately. Beneficiary: Ross Chloe Vance Luxury Lifestyle Account, a monthly transfers, designer clothing, luxury vacations, private club memberships, even the yacht's maintenance fees. Everything had been paid using company funds. Not a single payment came from Chloe herself. I closed my eyes for a moment. Growing up, I always wondered why Chloe never seemed worried about money. Now I understood: she never earned it. She simply spent ours. Marcus wasn't finished. There is something even worse. He placed another document in front of me. It was an insurance policy. The beneficiary names made my blood run cold. Arthur, Eleanor, Chloe. My name appeared near the bottom. Policy status: reduced coverage. I frowned. I don't understand. Harrison answered quietly. While you were deployed overseas, they reduced your medical coverage. What? They increased coverage for Chloe. And cut yours almost in half. For several seconds, I couldn't breathe. They knew I was in the military? Yes. They knew injuries were possible? Yes. And they still reduced it. Harrison nodded slowly. So if something happened to me, they would spend less. No one answered, because no one needed to. The silence told me everything. Later that afternoon, Marcus called with another discovery. You should come to the office. When Leo and I arrived, he was already waiting. On the large screen behind him appeared security footage from Sterling Holdings headquarters. Marcus paused the video. A familiar figure stood inside Grandpa's old office. My father. He opened Grandpa's private safe, removed several folders, then replaced them with different documents. The timestamp showed it happened only 2 weeks after Grandpa's funeral. They altered company records. Marcus explained. Immediately after your grandfather died. Leo whispered. They planned this from the beginning. I remembered Grandpa's favorite words. Money doesn't change people. It reveals them. I never truly understood what he meant, until now. A few days later, the forensic audit was complete. Harrison gathered everyone inside the conference room. This is the final report. He placed a thick binder on the table. It contained nearly 1,000 pages. Every fraudulent transfer, every forged signature, every fake corporation, every hidden account, every illegal purchase, every lie. There was enough evidence to send several people to federal prison. Harrison looked directly at me. We can file today. I glanced at Leo. He nodded. But before I answered, a question entered my mind. Leaf, we file now. They'll probably settle quietly. Harrison raised an eyebrow. They'll avoid prison if possible. I continued. They'll hide behind expensive lawyers. Marcus folded his arms. That's usually how wealthy people operate. I slowly stood. Everyone looked at me. They embarrassed me when I begged for help. They laughed while I couldn't walk. They celebrated while my future was falling apart. I took a slow breath. I don't want them arrested in some private office. I want the truth exposed. Harrison remained silent. I continued. Where's Clue this weekend? Marcus smiled slightly. Party. Location. Newport Beach Marina. Guests. Business partners. Investors. Local politicians. Media. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Perfect. Leo looked at me carefully. What are you thinking? I reached for the audit binder, then closed it. They wanted an audience when they celebrated. I looked at Harrison. We'll give them one. The attorney understood immediately. You want public service. I want justice. He nodded slowly. I can arrange federal marshals. Marcus added. I'll coordinate with financial crimes investigators. Leo looked between all of us. So, we're really doing this? I smiled. They thought they destroyed my future for $5,000. They're about to learn how expensive betrayal really is. For the next several days, everything was prepared in complete silence. Federal warrants were approved. Bank accounts were frozen. Corporate control documents were updated. The marina's outstanding commercial debt was quietly purchased through one of Harrison's investment partners. No one in my family noticed. They were too busy planning another glamorous celebration. The night before the party, I stood alone outside my apartment. The cool California breeze carried the smell of the ocean. I looked down at my knee. Only a month earlier, I could barely stand. Now, I could walk without pain. Not because my parents helped me, because my brother believed in me. I looked at Leo, who was locking his truck. You ready? He smiled. I've been ready since the day they laughed at you. I looked toward the distant city lights. Tomorrow, the lies would end. Tomorrow, my parents would finally face the consequences of every choice they had made. And before the sun set over Newport Beach, the same yacht they valued more than their own daughter would become the place where their entire world came crashing down. Saturday afternoon arrived with bright blue skies over Newport Beach. The marina looked exactly the way Chloe loved it. Luxury yachts lined the docks. Live music echoed across the water. Champagne flowed freely as waiters moved through the crowd carrying silver trays filled with expensive food. Every guest was dressed in designer clothing. Every smile looked perfect. Every conversation sounded successful. From a distance, it looked like the perfect American dream. No one there knew. It was about to become the scene of one of the biggest financial scandals the city had ever witnessed. Leo and I parked several blocks away. We didn't arrive in a sports car. We didn't hire a limousine. We walked toward the marina together. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't wearing a knee brace. Every step reminded me how close I had come to losing my future. If Leo hadn't stood beside me, if that lottery ticket hadn't changed everything, I wouldn't have been walking at all. "You okay?" Leo asked. I smiled. "Better than ever." He nodded. "So let's finish this." As we approached the yacht, conversations began to fade. Some guests recognized me from old family events. Others simply noticed the tension on my face. Then Chloe saw us. She lowered her champagne glass and frowned. "What are you two doing here?" Her voice carried across the dock. I thought I made it clear this party was invitation only. I calmly stepped onto the boarding platform. I wasn't invited. "I know." She crossed her arms. "So leave." My mother appeared beside her wearing an expensive white dress and enough jewelry to buy several new cars. Her expression immediately turned cold. "Vivienne. I thought we settled this." I looked directly at her. "No. We never did." Dad walked over a moment later. His smile disappeared as soon as he saw the folder in my hands. "What is that?" "A little history." I answered. He laughed confidently. "If this is about money again, you've already embarrassed yourself enough." Several nearby guests looked uncomfortable. Others quietly pulled out their phones. Some began recording, exactly as I had hoped. Chloe rolled her eyes. "Oh my God. Are we seriously doing this?" She looked toward the guests. "My sister always needs attention." The crowd laughed politely. I didn't. Instead, I slowly placed the thick binder onto one of the yacht's polished tables. The words on the front cover were impossible to ignore. Federal Forensic Audit, Sterling Holdings. A dad's smile vanished. "What is this?" "You'll find out." I opened the binder. Page after page of evidence, forged signatures, hidden accounts, illegal transfers, fraudulent corporations, luxury purchases, 8 years of theft. The conversations around us stopped completely. Even the music suddenly seemed quieter. Dad reached for the binder. I closed it before he could touch it. "No. You've hidden the truth long enough." A mom stepped closer. "Ah. Whatever you think this is, we can discuss it privately." I shook my head. "You had your chance to speak privately." When I called from the military hospital, her face immediately changed. For the first time, she looked nervous. Chloe tried to laugh. "This is ridiculous. She's still upset about that stupid surgery." I looked directly into her eyes. "You remember what you told me?" She shrugged. "I've said lots of things. You told me to take some Advil." The smile slowly disappeared from her face. "I remember. So do I." I turned toward the growing crowd. My parents refused to help pay for emergency surgery. They claimed they couldn't afford $5,000. Murmurs spread through the guests. Then I continued. 3 days later, they spent over $150,000 on this yacht. The whispers became louder. Someone in the crowd quietly asked, "Is that true?" Dad quickly interrupted. "That's a private family matter." "No," I answered. "It's corporate fraud." Those 2 words hit harder than anything else. Several executives exchanged worried looks. One investor quietly stepped away from the yacht. Another immediately started making a phone call. Harrison Vance chose that exact moment to arrive. He walked down the dock wearing a dark suit. Behind him came Marcus. Behind them 4 federal marshals, 2 agents from the Financial Crimes Division, and several local police officers. The crowd instantly moved aside. Silence spread across the marina. The lead marshal approached my father, Arthur Vance. Dad swallowed. "Yes, we have a federal arrest warrant." Mom grabbed his arm. "There has to be some mistake." "There isn't." The marshal handed him the warrant. Charges include wire fraud, corporate embezzlement, identity theft, tax fraud, conspiracy, and forgery. My father's hands began shaking. "This isn't possible." Harrison calmly opened another folder. "It is." He looked toward everyone watching. "Our investigation confirmed that more than $4 million was illegally taken from Sterling Holdings." The gasp spread through the guests. The same people who had admired my parents only minutes earlier now looked at them with complete disbelief. Marcus stepped forward. "The evidence also proves that forged legal documents were created while Miss Vivienne Vance was deployed overseas." I saw several reporters moving closer. Cameras pointed directly at us. Microphones appeared from every direction. The truth could no longer be hidden. My mother suddenly burst into tears. Vian, please. We're your parents. You can't do this. For a brief second, I remembered being a little girl, holding my mother's hand, believing she would always protect me. Then I remembered lying in that military clinic, begging for help, hearing laughter instead. My heart became calm. I didn't do this. You did. The marshals placed handcuffs on my father first. The sharp click echoed across the marina. Then my mother. She cried uncontrollably as officers escorted her toward the waiting vehicles. Chloe stood frozen. The confident woman who loved expensive parties had disappeared. In her place stood someone terrified. She looked at me with tears filling her eyes. Vivienne. I didn't know everything. Please, we're sisters. You can't take everything away. I quietly stepped closer. Only a few feet separated us. You know what hurts the most. She looked down. I wasn't the money. I wasn't the yacht. I wasn't even the betrayal. She slowly raised her eyes. I was realizing that my own sister valued a party more than my future. Tears rolled down her face. I'm sorry. The words finally came. The apology I had waited weeks to hear. But somehow, it no longer mattered. I gave her a small peaceful smile. The day I needed you. You told me to take some Advil. I paused. I hope you remember those words. Because from this day forward, they'll be the only thing people remember about this yacht. As police vehicles drove away carrying my parents, the guests quietly left one by one. The music stopped. The champagne glasses remained untouched. The celebration was over. The yacht that had once symbolized their wealth now stood completely empty. Leo walked beside me. Neither of us spoke. We simply watched the sun begin to set over the Pacific Ocean. Finally, he smiled. Do you think Grandpa would be proud? I looked toward the ocean. Then back at my little brother. No, I answered softly. I think Grandpa would simply be happy that the truth finally came home. Little did we know. The greatest reward wasn't the lottery. It wasn't the company. And it certainly wasn't revenge. The greatest reward was the new life waiting for us on the other side of justice. The weeks that followed felt strangely peaceful. For the first time in years, there were no lies, no pretending, no expensive parties hiding painful secrets. The truth had finally come into the light. The criminal investigation continued for several months. Every hidden account was uncovered. Every fake company was traced. Every forged document became evidence in federal court. The case that my parents thought would never be discovered quickly became one of the largest financial fraud investigations involving a family-owned business in California. Faced with overwhelming evidence, their attorneys negotiated a plea agreement. My father and mother both admitted their crimes in federal court. They received lengthy prison sentences. Most of their personal assets were seized and sold to repay Sterling holdings. Luxury cars disappeared. Vacation homes were auctioned. Designer jewelry was confiscated. The yacht that had caused so much heartbreak was sold at a public auction only a few weeks later. Ironically, the same yacht they chose over my future ended up helping restore the future they had tried to steal. After every debt was paid and every legal document was corrected, ownership of Sterling Holdings was finally returned according to Grandpa's original wishes. For the first time, the company belonged equally to Leo and me, exactly as Grandpa had intended. One afternoon, Harrison handed me the final folder. It's over, he said with a warm smile. I looked down at the closing documents. Years of lies had been reduced to a few signatures. So this is really the end. He nodded. The legal battle is over, but what you do with your future, that's entirely your decision. I thanked him, shook his hand and walked outside. The California sunshine felt warmer than I remembered. Not because the weather had changed. Because I finally felt free. A month later, Leo stood in front of an empty warehouse downtown. He smiled like a little kid seeing his first race car. This is it, he whispered. Our garage. I looked at the old brick building. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't perfect. But it represented something money could never buy. Hope. Using part of the recovered inheritance and a portion of my lottery winnings, we transformed that old warehouse into one of the finest automotive restoration shops in Los Angeles. On opening day, mechanics from all over the city came to congratulate Leo. Customers lined up before sunrise. Friends volunteered to help. And above the front entrance hung Grandpa's original brass sign. Leo carefully placed Grandpa's restored Snap on tools inside a large glass display near the reception desk. He looked at me and smiled. They're finally home. I smiled back. They never really belonged anywhere else. As for me, my knee healed completely. Months of rehabilitation allowed me to run again. The first time I completed a 5-mile run without pain. I stopped at the finish line and quietly cried. Not because I was hurting, because I wasn't. For so long, I believed my life had been defined by betrayal, but now, It was defined by resilience. I eventually accepted a leadership position, helping injured veterans transition back into civilian life. Every week, I met men and women who believed their worst day had destroyed their future. Every week, I told them the same thing: your hardest chapter doesn't have to be your final chapter. Many people later asked me if I ever forgave my parents. The answer surprised them. I didn't spend years carrying hatred. Hatred is heavy, and I had already carried enough weight. Forgiveness doesn't always mean inviting someone back into your life. Sometimes, forgiveness simply means refusing to let their choices control your future. As for Chloe, she wrote several letters after the trial. Some contained apologies, some contained excuses. I read every one of them, then quietly placed them inside a drawer. Not because I wanted revenge, but because healing sometimes requires distance. One evening, nearly a year after everything happened, Leo and I sat outside his garage watching the sunset. The same orange sky, the same California breeze, but this time, neither of us felt broken. Leo looked over at me. "Do you ever think about that phone call?" I smiled softly. "Sometimes." "What do you think about?" I looked toward Grandpa's sign hanging above the garage. "I think about how close I came to believing my life was worth only $5,000. Leo shook his head. "You were always worth more than that." I laughed quietly. "No. Were." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then I finally understood the greatest lesson of my entire journey. Money can build houses, but it cannot build a family. Power can buy luxury, but it cannot buy loyalty. A last name can open doors, but character determines whether you deserve to walk through them. The people who truly love you won't disappear when life becomes difficult. They'll stand beside you when you have nothing left. Just like Leo did. If my little brother hadn't sacrificed Grandpa's tools, if he hadn't believed in one impossible miracle, none of this would have happened. The lottery changed our finances. But Leo's love changed my life. And that's the difference I'll remember forever. If there's one thing I hope you take away from my story, it's this: never measure your worth by the way someone else treats you. The people who underestimate you are only revealing the limits of their own character. Stay honest. Protect the people who stand beside you. And never stop fighting for what's right, even when the people standing against you share your own last name. Because justice may take time, but the truth has a way of finding the light. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today and listening to my story. If this story touched your heart, inspired you, or reminded you never to give up, please take a moment to support the channel. Don't forget to like this video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and subscribe for more powerful, true, life-inspired stories just like this one. Until next time, take care of yourself, treasure the people who truly love you, and remember this: the greatest inheritance you'll ever receive isn't money. It's the courage to stand up when the whole world expects you to stay down. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.